Hey everybody, welcome back to American History with Mr. Finn. Today we are entering World War II. We're looking at the beginning of the war. If you remember, we had looked at Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. This is where we enter the war and we get started. And the first year is pretty bad, guys. The first year of the war that we are involved goes poorly for the Allies. Now, the Allies really are, in the beginning, the United States of America and England, because France had been taken over. But let's take a look at this first year. Why was it so bad? Well, to begin, the United States jumps into war. We're not ready. The Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan had already been fighting. They had already been expanding. Pearl Harbor had been wrecked, so even in the Pacific, we were, we were on the defensive kind of everywhere. Hitler and Mussolini had taken over most of Europe at this point. We get lucky. England is going to, I'll just tell you, the Battle of Britain. The Battle of Britain really isn't much of a battle. So Britain is England. Germany bombs England like 24 hours a day for a full year, trying to get England to surrender to Germany. However, they don't do it. So England has survived that Battle of Britain, but even they are beat up. Their cities are, had been bombed and destroyed. The Allies, the United States and England, are kind of holding on very thin threads here as we get into this war. So what do? We have two people. We have Roosevelt, the president of the USA, and we have Churchill. Churchill is going to be England. So the idea is, all right, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to turn this around? How do we figure this out? And so what Roosevelt and Churchill, because here's the thing, fighting in World War II was all over the place, right? It was in Asia, it was in Europe. What do we concentrate on first? Do we go after Japan first? Do we go after Hitler first in Europe? What do? Well, England was in trouble. Like I said, England was like the only country left. They had survived the Battle of Britain, but they're barely hanging on. So it was decided that in the beginning, let's concentrate our forces. So first, win Europe. Then go to the Pacific, where Japan was. That's the goal. They go, listen, this is our goal right now. We're going to try and win the war in Europe, and then we'll concentrate our forces in the Pacific. And so this is what they decide to do. Now they get a little bit lucky here. So this first year, they're on the defensive. The United States has to pull troops and retreat in parts of Asia. Japan is allowed to expand. The Axis powers are expanding in Europe. And by the way, the United States is still trying to get supplies made, get our factories up and running and everything like that. So it goes poorly, but Hitler makes a mistake in 1942. It's kind of a big one. In 1942, in the beginning, we're going to see Hitler attacks Russia. If you remember a couple lessons ago, we had Germany had signed a non-aggression pact with Russia, saying, listen, we won't mess with you, you don't mess with us. So that allowed Germany to concentrate completely on France and Belgium and Luxembourg, the rest of Europe, not have to worry as much about Russia because they had a non-aggression pact. Now that Hitler has taken over pretty much all of Europe, he's like, all right, let's go back to Russia now. Let's get after Russia. The problem that we see in Russia is the same problem that happened to Napoleon in the past, and that is, Napoleon was a French leader, by the way. Hitler attacks Russia, and there's not really a better way to put this. Russia is cold. Literally, Russia's freezing cold. You can attack Russia at certain times of the year, but if you don't win quickly, all of a sudden the winter hits, your tanks won't operate correctly, the soldiers are freezing, the Russians are used to it, they know their homeland, and your entire army can get decimated. So what happens is this: Hitler attacks Russia. He goes in there with like 300,000 people, tries to conquer Russia, is unable to conquer Russia because Russia is cold and they have their troops. So here's the real problem: is two things. Germany loses men, so that's not good. And there's one and two. Russia is now in the war. And Russia being in the war is a problem because now Germany's got that means they have a two-front war. They now got to worry about Russia on one side, and they got to worry about England and the rest of the, Allied powers coming on the other side. And so that is the issue that Germany has now, because Hitler tried to do this attack on Russia, which was not a good idea, and now he's left with the allies of England and the United States now having Russia on their side as well. And this is when things kind of turn around, because Germany now has lost some troops. They have lost, they have Russia in on their side. Let me make sure here. Last place I want to talk about today is back to the Churchill and Roosevelt. So Hitler attacks Russia, which is a good thing in 1942. That's one thing that turns around the war in 1942. The other thing is this: tank warfare in North Africa. All right. So here's the strategy that we have for the Allies. They are going to come into North Africa, and they are going to come into Italy, which is in the south. I'm going to try and do something. We'll see if this works, because I have a page here. Maybe it works. If not, whatever. We can just try it. Anyway, so here's the deal. We have North Africa right here. North Africa, the Allies will land here. They're going to come up into Italy and split all of Europe in half. That's the theory that the Allies have. Come over here, North Africa, come into Italy, and then wreak havoc in there. That's the plan. Anyway, in North Africa, we have tank warfare. This is going to be a big deal. This is where we first start to see Allies winning. They're winning some battles. This is good. Because you got to think, by the time we're in 1942, we had gone the entire first year of this war kind of in retreat, on the defensive, not winning any battles, leaving places. It did not look good for that first year at all. And so to start seeing Allied victories in certain places was big for morale. This is a boost. That's a good thing. We start to see wins. We say, hey, our strategy is working. We're winning some battles in North Africa. Soon we'll make our way into Italy. We got a long way to go still. But at least at this time, you're starting to see that we are able to fight back. And that's as we get into mid-1942. This war is going to go to 1945. So we do have a couple more years of fighting to go. So we are just in the beginning starting to see some victories. But next class, we'll start to jump around and see different areas, different strategies, and what's going to happen. But for today, we don't need to worry about a timeline as much as I want you to do your images. And you know how this is. Images, pictures from World War II. and 2 to 3 sentences on what you see, question mark. What do you see in these images? Again, this is the assignment that we do when we get into a new topic because I want you to be able to see kind of what I'm talking about. So just some ideas. Type in World War II. You can type in Roosevelt, Churchill, tanks, planes, Battle of Britain, as we talked about. You can look through all these things. Let me give you a number because I always like to do that. Number of pictures is 10. Find 10 images and tell me what you see. Make sure you get that to me today for attendance and participation purposes. But as we get back, we will move forward with this war, and then we make a real run up to present day. And that's the news, and then we're done. So I will see you next class.